Good evening all, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Eastleigh Local Area Committee. My name is Councillor Tanya, and I will be chairing the meeting this evening in Councillor Bourne's absence. Councillors will now have to nominate a vice chair in the chair for this evening. I propose Councillor Beer. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Paul. All those in favour? Thanks, Stephen. Councillors are reminded that to take part in this meeting, you must have an open mind so that you can take all the relevant considerations presented to the meeting into account in reaching your decision. By attending today, you have decided that you will listen to all points of view expressed by the speakers and public and are able to participate and cannot be seen to have predetermined the applications. This meeting will be video recorded and will be uploaded to the Council's website. If any members of the public prefer not to be recorded, then do please contact a member of staff. If you're planning on filming or recording this meeting, then please do let us know so that we can ensure you're not filming members of the public that do not wish to be filmed. The Chair reserves the right to ask any filming considered intrusive to be stopped. More information is available on the Council's website. We always welcome people to speak at the meeting, although this is a formal committee meeting of the Eastleigh Borough Council and not a public meeting. The members of the public that are registered to speak will be invited to speak at the relevant agenda item and will be given a total of 3 minutes to speak. When the light is amber, they have 30 seconds remaining. People wishing to speak on an item on the agenda are able to do so before the debate starts. However, once the debate has started, it is not possible to invite or receive comments from the floor. We want to be as inclusive as possible, but will not tolerate any disruptions to our meeting. Should there be any disruptions, we do have the power under the Council's constitution to remove people from the meeting or continue in private, neither of which we likely or wish to do. Do we have any apologies?
We have apologies from Councillor Bourne, Chair.
Thank you.
Just to clarify the time, we've got the clock set up, and this is the traffic light system that we've got. It's actually programmed for 2 minutes, amber at 1 minute to go. So it's not the 30 seconds, so people might well be caught there. So it's 1 minute when the amber comes on.
Thank you. Do members have any declaration of interest they wish to make? If so, please indicate now, and when called, please state the nature and reason for the interest. You can, of course, declare any interest as they occur to you in the meeting. Councillor Bicknell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare an interest in agenda item number 7, planning application for 237 Chamberlain Road and 5B Derby Road. This is due to the close proximity that our property is about 3 metres from this application site.
Understood. We now move to the minutes of the meeting held on 6th June 2023. Can I now approve these as a true record? Do I have a proposer? Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Beer. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Irish. All agreed? Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Now we move to public participation. And I've got Simon Payne wishing to speak. Come up and speak.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, councillors. Just a couple of points I'd just like to raise this evening. First one is around airport noise. Obviously, following the completion of the extension of the runway, are the council now monitoring the noise impact of it, or do we just have to wait until the CAA issue noise controls to the airport? It is now more noticeable, especially in the gardens, at the weekends when there's bigger planes are now taking off from that runway, the BA planes at the weekends. Secondly, on unauthorised encampments. Within the last couple of months, we've had unauthorised encampments at both Lawn Road and Grantham Green. I can recall speaking to councillors after previous encampments that we had on Parsford Avenue and was told that areas like these particular sites would be very low risk because of the fact there's houses overlooking them. Well, low risk has now actually become it's happened there. So please can we have assurances that councillors are now looking at measures to take at these locations to prevent them being used in this way again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. We will respond to your questions after the meeting. Now we move on to the Chair's report. This will be included into the minutes, but I am aware we've got a lot of people wishing to speak, so to make sure we're not all here till the early hours, I won't read it out, but it will be included in the minutes. Now we move on to presentation of planning guidelines. Rebecca Altman, do you want to give that presentation?
Yeah, thank you. So this is just a presentation to remind members and everybody how we determine the planning applications. They must be determined on planning grounds and in line with the development plan, unless there's material considerations that indicate otherwise. And in this case, a development plan is the adopted Eastleigh Borough Local Plan and the Hampshire Minerals and Waste Plan, although in these particular applications we'll be determining tonight, the Minerals and Waste Plan doesn't actually apply. In terms of other relevant considerations, there's a number of adopted supplementary planning documents that are relevant to the planning applications, such as Equality Places, SPD, and planning obligations. There's relevant planning policy guidance outlined in the National Planning Policy Framework, which has recently been updated, which sets out the presumption in favour of sustainable development. And this is what this says is that the National Planning Policy Framework is a material consideration that takes precedent over development plan policies if they do not accord with the NPPF. But in our case, we do have a recently adopted local plan, so they do take full effect. This is just explaining some of the key requirements set out in the NPPF, which is delivering sustainable development without delay, meeting the housing needs of the communities and boosting the delivery of housing, promoting growth to the economy, requiring high standards of design and preventing or mitigating impacts. In terms of this presumption in favour of sustainable development, this includes 3 separate elements of consideration, which are economic, social and environmental, and they must all be considered together in a mutually supportive way in order to reach a positive determination. Other material considerations that might come into play include planning history of a site, previous applications and previous appeal decisions, site-specific policies or allocations, site-specific matters such as highway matters, ecology, drainage, tree impacts, comments and representations from third parties, and also in some cases there's case law precedent related to a site. In terms of what planning issues we can't take into account when determining an application, these are just some examples. So moral, racial or religious views, devaluation of properties, loss of private views, breach of a covenant, or matters that are covered by other laws and legislation such as building regulations, environmental legislation, personal views about the character of an applicant, and civil matters such as boundary disputes and rights of access. If we are looking at, if we're going to look at a recommendation that is contrary to what the officer recommendation is, then this has to be minuted clearly and explained clearly with reasons given. If there's an option given to defer an application, to seek amendments or further information, then again it has to be very clearly indicated what these are and the reason for that. If the option is to add further controls on a use or ask for further details, these must be reasonable in planning terms. And the local planning authority is required to consider whether otherwise unacceptable development could be made acceptable through the use of conditions. And you'll see that the applications are, in this case, are subject to various conditions. And these have got to meet what's called the 6 tests. They must be necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise, and reasonable in all other respects. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Now we move on to item 7, planning application for 237 Chamberlain Road and 5D Derby Road, Eastleigh, SO55HA. Rebecca, would you like to present it?
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I declared an interest in planning application on this planning application on agenda item number 7. As I understand it, I'm not able to take part. I see the nod from the legal, so I shall leave the room and enjoy your debate. And if somebody can come and give me a poke when you're all done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just before I go into the main presentation, I just want to report an update that came about this today, which followed the publication of the report. So the recommendation outlined in the report that was published said it was subject to a response from Natural England on the appropriate assessment, which relates to the impact of development on the special protection areas. We've now received that response from Natural England. They have actually maintained an objection, and the reasons for doing so relates to some concerns that they have with the Council's new forest mitigation strategy. These are concerns that the Council is aware of, and we're working with Natural England to resolve them. But from the local authority's point of view, as the competent authority, it considers the strategy to be robust and appropriate, and therefore there is no change to the recommendation in this case. I can answer any questions on that later on. So the application site, which is probably quite familiar, is located on the south side of Derby Road on the corner with Chamberlain Road. It was previously occupied by Samson's Gym and a workshop on the west side. These were demolished in 2022, and the site has since been vacant, and currently it's hoarded. The surrounding area is predominantly residential, and in the immediate vicinity of the site along Chamberlain Road, it's predominantly terraced housing, 2-storey in height. As you go to the west, there's a bit more of a variation in the form of the housing. And if you go further sort of north and east, then you do get some flatted developments and commercial developments. We're also very close to Grantham Green, which is about 60 metres to the west. The planning application is for the construction of 12 dwellings on the site. This would be 9 flats and 3 houses. The flats, the whole block is an L-shaped block with the 3 houses on the western side fronting Derby Road, and the flats would then be in this part of the building here, with some fronting onto Derby Road and some fronting onto Chamberlain Road. The vehicle access to the site would be from Derby Road via a service road, which is currently used to access a number of garages for the housing to the south. And this would lead into a car park with 11 unallocated parking spaces, as well as a communal refuse store and a communal bike store on the south side of the building here. I've just got some photographs of the site and surroundings, just to assist. So these are photographs looking across the site as it currently is in its vacant form. So this one looks across to the northeast, and this one's looking straight to the north, so you can see the side of the house on the opposite side of Derby Road. The view here is looking east across the site, and you can see the rear of number 239 Chamberlain Road. And then this one is taken from Derby Road, and you can see number 23 Derby Road here, and the service road access to the site. Then these are just some sort of more street scene images looking along Derby Road to the east and to the west, and then looking straight down towards the site here, and the nearest properties here on Chamberlain Road, and the area of, well, we'd refer it to sort of an area of public realm where there's some tree planting which blocks that top part of Chamberlain Road. And then site photographs from Chamberlain Road. This is the form of vehicle access which is no longer used into the site, and that's directly adjacent to number 239 Chamberlain Road. This then shows looking up towards the north with some, you can see the street trees and the housing on the opposite side of Chamberlain Road. This is then showing a closer up view of the trees and the planting. And then this is the street scene looking south down Chamberlain Road, showing there's sort of terraced housing there. I've just shown the site layout again so that when I show the elevations on the next slides, it's just giving the context. These are the elevations. They would be 3-storey block of flats. The houses would also be 3-storey, but with the 3rd floor contained within the roof space, served by roof lights on the northern side and dormer windows. Sorry, roof lights on the southern side and dormer windows on the northern side. The upper floor flats would have balconies, although I would note at this point that the 2 balconies that were previously proposed on the flats on the Chamberlain Road side have been replaced with Juliet-style balconies. And this was in response to concerns with overlooking and loss of privacy from those balconies. In terms of the height, you can see that the highest part of the building is on the corner to give the building a presence on the corner location, and then it steps down more in line with the height of the adjacent development. Materials would be red brick and buff brick to give the contrast, and there's sort of design features including sort of setbacks of windows and overhangs to, again, give visual interest to the building. The floor plans, just to show that we've got, so the houses would each have the main living space on the ground floor and then 3 bedrooms, 1 within the roof space and 2 on the first floor. And then you've got a number of flats in this L-shaped block, which would either be having a sort of east-west outlook or a north-south outlook. And then the houses would have their gardens to the south. The street scene images have been provided to give an indication of the scale and form of development and how it relates to the neighbouring properties. So this is along the Derby Road street scene, and you can see number 23 Derby Road just to the right there, and the housing in Chamberlain Road on the left-hand side. And then this street scene is taken on Chamberlain Road to show an approximately half-metre difference between the height of the flats and the height of the Chamberlain Road properties. Then some 3D images which also help to give an indication of the scale and the form and how it's been designed to relate to the neighbouring properties. And I can bring these slides up again if there's particular questions. One of the key issues that we've had to consider through the application is the impact on the neighbouring properties. So I thought it would just be useful to go through how we've assessed the impact on some of the closest properties. This photograph shows the rear of number 239 Chamberlain Road. You can see it has a number of windows that face west, but it also does have a couple of windows that face north over the application site, and that includes a kitchen window on the ground floor and a bedroom window on the first floor. The building, the proposed new building would have its elevation adjacent to this window, but there would be a 4-metre gap, which means so that retains a level of light and outlook to that bedroom window. In terms of the kitchen window impact, because of the existing boundary treatment and the positioning of the buildings, it's not considered to be a significant impact there. For 23 Derby Road, you can see this photo is taken from the service road looking north, and you can see that building is sited at an angle to the application site, so that none of the windows directly face it, and none of the windows on the proposed development would directly face that property. And the separation distances are considered to be sufficient to prevent any adverse loss of privacy or light to that particular neighbour. And then on the opposite side of Derby Road, you've got a number of properties, and as I explained before, there has been a change to the balconies to reduce the level of overlooking, but in general, the separation distance is considered to be acceptable. It's similar to what we've got already between housing, and it's also similar to the relationship that you do get in the surrounding area between sort of, taller blocks of flats and housing. It's quite a common relationship in an urban environment. One of the biggest issues that's come up in representations has related to questioning why housing hasn't been proposed on the Chamberlain Road side instead of the flats that are shown. What I've done here is just shown an example of one of the iterations of the scheme that was considered at a pre-application stage. I want to stress this is not an alternative. This is just an example of a scheme that was put forward to the council and was considered, and just to outline some of the issues and why it wasn't taken forward. So this particular proposal showed a flat block that stretched along the Derby Road frontage, but it also went very close to the corner of the site and very close to all of the boundaries. It then had 3 houses fronting Chamberlain Road, but these would have been set back behind parking areas and then parking to the flats here. Some of the main issues with this was the interrelationship between the housing and the flats. We had issues with very little sort of outlook for these flats facing south because there would be too much overlooking of the gardens of the houses or blocked by the actual houses to the south. And then if you're an occupant of the house, you would then have poor outlook due to the presence of this 3-storey block so close to the northern boundary. So that was some of the issues there. There was also a concern about the overlooking and the housing having quite a poor frontage in terms of being dominated by parking with little space for landscaping. And as I mentioned, the flats were quite close to the boundaries, so it had a poor presence to the corner. So there was various issues that were looked at and considered, but ultimately this scheme was ruled out and not taken any further forward. So that's just to explain some of the things that have led to the scheme that's now been put forward that we've now considered. And then just looking at the wider context of the site, there are examples of flatted developments in the area. So flats are considered to be appropriate for this type of urban site. And whilst there may not be a precise comparison relationship between flats and houses, there are examples of where flats face housing in the surrounding area. So if we look at the wider context, this is considered to be an appropriate type of scheme for the area. And then just to cover off, there is a proposal to enhance the public realm at the top of Chamberlain Road, because it's quite, just to improve it really with some better planting and fix the planters and make it more attractive. And this is subject to a proposed condition. Just to run through the main considerations, which is obviously outlined in a lot more detail in my report. The proposal would make a good reuse of a brownfield site and have a positive contribution towards housing land supply, in particular affordable housing, because this is proposed to be a 100% affordable housing scheme. So that is a significant benefit of the scheme. And it would also provide contributions towards various local infrastructure, such as public art and community improvements. In terms of design, the layout and design has been considered to take account of the context and to improve energy efficiency, and also to take account of the impact on neighbouring residents and also future occupants to ensure a good level of amenity for existing and proposed residents. Other matters that have been considered include drainage and pollution, transport and parking, ecology and trees, all covered in more detail in the report, but we've reached agreement with the various consultees that there would be acceptable drainage scheme. Contaminated land and noise would be addressed appropriately. The level of parking, whilst lower than the council's adopted parking standards, is appropriate for a town centre location, and the adopted parking standards do set out that in Eastleigh town centre there is scope to reduce the parking standards because of the accessibility of the site and the proximity to local services and public transport. In terms of ecology and trees, the council's tree officer is satisfied the trees would be protected, and the impacts on the special protection areas, which is what I mentioned before with Natural England's comments, would be addressed through a contribution towards the council's mitigation schemes, which is covered in more detail in my report. So the recommendation is subject to conditions, and so the recommendation as put in the report is up there, but the text in blue just updates that. So we have received the response from Natural England, and we've also received all necessary responses from other consultees, so there's no new conditions to add. So the recommendation would be permission subject to the payment of developers' contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Now we move on to speakers. I'm aware we've got some have already registered to speak, but are there anybody else who wishes to speak that hasn't already registered? No? Okay, fabulous. Can we move on to the first speaker then? I think that's Mr. Everett, as a representative of Maple Place Working Group.
Yeah, can I just check before you start the clock that I've got 5 minutes rather than 3? That's what Alex Bourne agreed with me. Okay. Fine. And before I start, you've all got packs with slides that I wasn't allowed to show tonight. So when I refer to a drawing, that's your first slide. And when I start referring to the orchard, you can go through the slides one after the other. Okay? Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Bob Everett, and I live on Chamberlain Road. Thank you for allowing me to speak, not once but twice, firstly for the Maple Place Working Group. We've worked hard on the group for 2 years to try and make this development a success for everyone involved. We've succeeded in getting on-site parking on the plot and cutting the number of homes. But frankly, we feel betrayed by the design and layout of these plans. We'd agreed a mix of houses and flats with the developers. The houses would face Chamberlain Road and the flats would face Derby Road. And we understood that a traditional pitched roof design was on the cards. Instead, the houses are on Derby Road and the flats are on Chamberlain Road. And the design is rightly called hybrid because it's neither one thing nor the other. It's a hodgepodge. An overbearing, flat-roofed office block with 3 houses stuck on as an afterthought. We made our feelings clear when we first saw the design in February, but we've been completely ignored. And we believe we have sound planning grounds for objecting to the layout. The Council's own planning document, Quality Places, warns against new building, which is overbearing to existing housing, has unacceptable impacts on the privacy and amenity of surrounding houses. But if you approve this development, that's exactly what you'll be sanctioning, and the victims will be living on Chamberlain Road. Quality Places also says any design must respect the local character of the surrounding buildings, and roof lines must complement the surrounding development. This design does neither. There are things that could be done to make a development like this look better. Quality Places even has a helpful diagram showing ways to deal with it. It includes design features like roof articulation and dormers, just the sort of features you'd have if you put the houses on Chamberlain Road. Yet it's apparently vital to put the houses on Derby Road, and I quote, to acknowledge the transition from Victorian terrace to lower density houses at the Hardy Road, Derby Road junction. Well, there are 3 houses at the Hardy Road, Derby Road junction. They sit at 45 degrees to the proposed development, and they don't face it, they back onto it. Putting all the flats on Derby Road would barely impact them at all, but putting them on Chamberlain Road would ruin the outlook and privacy of the houses opposite and adjacent. On the other hand, putting houses on Chamberlain would make a huge difference to those living around the development and improve the character of the whole road. Paragraph 79 of the report's pack admits that planning guidance doesn't set a minimum distance between the fronts of 2 sets of residential buildings. It says that depends on local context and things like privacy, daylight, and overshadowing. In other words, judge it on a case-by-case basis. Well, unlike Rebecca, we say that in this case, flats towering over the terraced houses with windows overlooking their bedrooms will definitely affect the privacy and daylight of the people living in them. Paragraph 80 of the pack points out that the orchard in your packs, a 4-storey block further along Chamberlain Road, fronts terraced houses. The planners say that gives them a precedent for putting flats along Chamberlain Road. We say there are good and bad precedents, and the orchard is pretty clearly a bad one. It's opposite the Grantham Arms, and it towers over everything, even the pub. It clearly didn't suit the planners' agenda to highlight another nearby block, Sovereign Place, on the junction of Nutbeam and Blenheim Road. Flats on a very similar plot to this site, in fact. It has 12 flats over 3 floors, each with its own car space, and it blends harmoniously with the surroundings. Most importantly, the flats complement the Nutbeam Road houses beautifully. So it can be done. And if it had been done like this, in the case of Maple Place, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. You'll be hearing about other concerns, some shared by the Town Council. Things like safety, traffic, density of development, even sewage. But we're all asking you one thing. Please turn down the development of this site in this form. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Everett. We'll call you again later once we've gone through the other speakers. Now call Mr. Turpin.
I believe it's a good idea to provide affordable housing on the site. However, it's clear that the current design is too dense. It's trying to fit too many additional residents into too small a site, which is impractical and would have a negative impact on the local area, not just for the existing residents, but also the quality of life of the new residents will be diminished compared to what it could potentially be if there were simply fewer dwellings in the design. According to the government's land use statistics for residential addresses report published in October 22, the average density of dwellings within 1 hectare for newly created residential addresses was 31. For scale, according to paragraph 74 of the planning officer's report, the proposed design here is for 120 dwellings per hectare. This is 4 times the national average. Paragraph 69 of the officer's report states that the design is intended to accommodate 39 additional permanent residents. Paragraph 26 of the report states that the number of parking spaces for the site is below that is required by the Eastleigh Borough Council parking standards. According to that document, written by the council, there should be 1 parking space per 1-bedroom residence and 1.5 spaces per 2- and 3-bedroom residences, which for the proposed design is 15 spaces, plus 2 visitor spaces for a total requirement of 17 spaces for a development of this scale. That means there's a shortfall in the design of 6 spaces. The fact that the site can only physically accommodate 64% of the minimum required number of parking spaces is clear evidence that the design is too dense and not suitable for the proposed site. Paragraph 104 of the report also states that the Highway Authority has commented that a reduced level of parking could result in increased overspill parking on surrounding roads. But at the same time, the design clearly states that none of the residents of the new dwellings will be allowed parking permits due to the already insufficient level of parking on Chamberlain and surrounding roads. So it's clear that there's not enough parking in the design to accommodate all 39 new residents, but also that no provision at all is being made elsewhere to accommodate those who arrive home from work when their car park is full. Where will these people park, and what stress will this impose on them on a daily basis? I'm not proposing that the new residents are allowed permits, rather that the solution is to reduce the number of dwellings in the design. In summary, all of the above issues are caused by trying to fit too many dwellings into the site footprint, driven by the incorporation of the 3-storey block of flats. A simple solution to this, which resolves all of these issues, still enables the council to provide affordable housing and keeps the existing local residents happy, is quite simply to build only houses on the site. After all, Eastleigh Borough Council's 2016 to 2036 local plan states clearly that the largest need for affordable housing in Eastleigh is for 2- and 3-bedroom houses, so why not just build houses on the site instead with no flats? As a minimum, I would urge the council to at least reject the current proposal and for the planners to come back with a design reducing from a 3-storey block of flats to a 2-storey block.
Thank you, Mr. Turpin. I now call Mr. Yates.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lawrence Yates, and I live at 182 Chamberlain Road. I'm here speaking on behalf of my family. We live right opposite this proposed development, and we object very strongly to it. I've been part of the Maple Place working group since it started in January 2021. Myself and others have been working with the developers to form a proposal that's suitable for them and, more importantly, for the residents of Chamberlain Road. At a meeting with developers last year, I was shown a proposed layout that worked for my family. It showed 3 houses fronting Chamberlain Road and flats on Derby Road. This would have continued the existing housing line and wouldn't have had any impact on our privacy either. And then, at the final non-face-to-face meeting with the developers, the earlier proposal had been completely turned round. In the new proposal, my family faced living opposite what can only be described as a town centre office block with the most horrendous flat roof. As if this wasn't bad enough, there were also the addition of full balconies. To my family, this presented a huge privacy and noise issue that would severely impact on our current way of life and would certainly bring about a depressive culture with mental health issues. Not acceptable. Myself and others have constantly and consistently asked on what planning grounds the former proposal had been completely turned around. To this day, no one has been either able or prepared to answer the question to my satisfaction, and neither does a recently released public report. When the latest version was pinned to the hoarding around the site, the full balconies had been replaced with Juliet balconies. I can't think of anywhere in Eastleigh where full balconies directly overlook the fronts of terrace houses. I fully believe that the planners knew this wouldn't meet planning requirements, and by replacing them with Juliet balconies, somehow believe they gave me a concession for which I should be eternally grateful. As a member of the working group, I feel that I have been hearing, we're going to work with you, and the carrot's been dangled in front of me, and then at the last minute it's been taken away. Many thanks for listening, and please do the right and responsible thing and reject this current proposal for the sake of my family. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. I now call Julie Carter.
Good evening. My name is Julie Carter and I have lived on Chamberlain Road for nearly 60 years. I agree with everything the other residents have said. I'm a member of the working group. I joined because I am passionate about where I live and detested the original proposal of 19 flats with no parking. Residents came together after seeing the original plans and all were of the same mind. Yes, homes were needed, but it should be 4 houses along Chamberlain Road, mirroring the houses opposite. We were later told that the size of our houses didn't conform to the modern standards. So we discussed the idea of mixing flats and houses, which sounded promising. But after seeing the design for 3 houses on our road, we were told they would need to be on Derby Road. This went against everything we discussed. Then we were confronted with a new design, a building that looked similar to offices on an industrial estate, not town flats designed to blend in around 100-year-old houses. The design does not reflect any of the architecture of Chamberlain Road. No connection between old and new. We were asked to object to this plan in writing and given just 2 days to do so. Members busted a gut doing this, but no one took any notice, and we still haven't had a proper written response. I am pleased to see that the Town Council agreed that the plan isn't in character with the existing properties in the area, and that they have a safety concerns about the entrance to the development and houses fronting onto Derby Road. The planning documents state there are houses fronting Derby Road to the east of the development. These houses were built circa 1905, long before cars. Traffic outside them is a nightmare. Just because half a mile away there are houses facing Derby Road doesn't mean they are right for this location. All the terraces in the area face east to west like Chamberlain, not north to south like Derby Road. So it makes sense to put the houses on Chamberlain. Apparently the street scene drawings show how this design enhances this area, but the street scenes are so misleading. There are no 3D representations of the Chamberlain Road side, like the ones of the Derby Road side, despite our repeated requests, because they would show how bad the juxtaposition of the flats and houses really is. If the plan on display tonight was for houses on Chamberlain and flats along Derby Road, I, as a resident, would have given this my blessing and would not be here tonight with other residents. I don't think planners care, and it's wrong. Please show us that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call Tessa Rossi.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak. I would like to say that I agree with all the objections that have been made so far. My name is Tessa Rossi, and I've lived on this block of flats, Chamberlain Road, for the past 37 years. When the council turned our part of the road into a cul-de-sac, they helped make it a unique little community. When people arrive, they tend to stay, like Julie. And there are plenty of living in this block of Chamberlain Road for 20 years or more. We've become closer since COVID, making sure we looked after one another during and after lockdown. We ensured our elderly and infirm neighbours were fed, held fundraising events for cancer and mental health charities, sang to our neighbours who were shielding at Christmas and on everyone's birthdays too. So much so that Chamberlain community featured on national television. We all understand the need for new housing on a brownfield area like the gym site, that's clear. But the terraced housing is an important factor, making this part of Chamberlain Road the community it is. The only houses in this plan are on Derby Road. It may make sense to the planners, but on a human level, it's a bit cruel. The people living in the houses aren't going to be part of any community. They'll be facing a bus stop, gardens and a fence. They'll have nothing but the entry on one side and the flats in a separate building on the other. Putting the houses on Derby Road means that they're just yards from the main road and a bus stop. It'll be quite dangerous for families with young children. The people in flats will form their own community within the building. Wouldn't it be better for the young families in those houses to be within Chamberlain Road rather than out on a limb? As well as completing the terrace and keeping the character of the road, putting the houses on Chamberlain Road would include these families and who would otherwise be isolated. To me, that can only be a good thing. Thank you for listening.
Next we have Charlie. Is Charlie arrived? Is she here?
I'm afraid she's not coming. She's had a work issue. She's no longer working for the people that she thought she was. So.
So whilst Guy Riddick reads through that before he reads it out, we're going to move on to Bob Everett speaking on his own behalf.
Hello again. Can I just say that I've lived here with my wife for 6 years and it's the best community we've ever belonged to. I endorse everything that's been said before. An additional bit from me on parking, and I can tell you that whatever traffic and parking studies say, people on Chamberlain Road can find themselves parking a quarter of a mile from home several times a week. So whatever happens tonight, I'll be asking Hampshire Council for the bays in front of the development and on our corner of Chamberlain Road and Derby Road to be redesignated as Zone 3 parking at all times. It would be good if our Eastleigh councillors supported that. Now, let's talk sewage. There's a blocked sewage pipe to be dealt with before construction. Hooray! Let's hope that deals with the awful smell filling the air around the site. The trouble is, we don't know for certain that it will. A lot of sewage goes through sewers close to the development. I understand a siphon system under Derby Road fills up with waste from the Pirelli estate. It then discharges into the main sewer running at the back of houses and behind this development. The plan would add at least 60 extra sources to the system, including toilets, showers and washing machines. If you allow for 3 people per household, even using only 90 litres a day, that's more than 3,000 litres of extra waste pouring into a creaking system. Southern Water was called out a number of times last year to deal with blocked, overflowing and foul-smelling drains. One visit was apparently to stop waste from a broken main sewer on Derby Road, contaminating a storm drain feeding into Monk's Brook. A contractor told me they couldn't find the problem because their Victorian maps were showing pipes that weren't there. So when Southern Water says this development is okay to go, how can we be sure? How can they be sure? Please think carefully if the system can sustain the homes in this development. If not, local residents could pay the price. To finish, some quick thoughts about the design of Maple Place. It's just wrong. It was changed after consultation with planners, and the word consultation is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. In fact, I understand there was a summer-long row last year between planners and developers, and that was the only design both could accept. Hardly a flagship development. This site is intended to showcase houses intended for One Horton Heath, but why should we act as guinea pigs for a greenfield estate that isn't built yet, especially with this design? The flats are intended to reflect the iconic design of the building that was there before. Brilliant. Now Sampson's Gym has been knocked down. It's iconic. But the council refused to save the building itself. Why should we put up with a daily reminder of what we've lost? That's really rubbing our noses in it. Please turn this application down. It's wrong for us and it's wrong for Eastleigh.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just read this out. Hi, Charlie from 239, the property that sits directly adjacent to the development. Having been in project management and operations for over 10 years, I can understand how complex the delivery of a project like Maple Place is. I'd like to point out that none of us are opposed to the new development. We do, however, oppose to aspects of the design and planning from a privacy and overlooked perspective. I welcomed Rebecca, the planning officer, to view the surrounding area from my home, which has been referenced in the report, point 77. I would like to highlight that a 5-minute walk around my house, a few pictures and a glimpse from some of the windows does not capture the reality of our circumstances, nor does it really position Rebecca to validate what's right or wrong and how we will or won't be impacted by the development in the future. I live in this property with my husband and a 2.5-year-old, and we will be directly impacted by the design of the proposed development, and we will have to live with that for 24 hours a day, as will our neighbours. The view will now be a stark 3-storey red brick box of flats with 30-plus people overlooking the entire Chamberlain cul-de-sac community. Point 77 specifically states that the outlook from my north-facing window will be more restricted. This will be totally overlooked from every angle. This is my son's bedroom. It previously looked out onto the parapet roof of the gym. However, there were no windows, nor were there any onlookers glimpsing in from the gym. From my perspective, there is likely to be groups of people gathering and lingering beneath the window in the car park or communal area, making noise night and day, or just even people glimpsing in from their windows. You have acknowledged this. It has also been highlighted in point 57 that the new development is an acceptable layout that respects the relationship with neighbouring properties and provides a suitable living environment for future residents. But in whose opinion? Point 82, cars moving at slow pace and lights and noise being minimal. This is all on the grounds that nobody will play music loudly, nor smoke, nor linger about in the car park beneath my child's bedroom window and adjacent to the side entrance of my house, the kitchen door echoing into my house. Point 83 highlights sound from the patios and balconies. The relative noise levels you are comparing to are noises by day, but not by night. The cul-de-sac is peaceful, attractive to families and older people who wish to enjoy their family time. It shapes the quality of life. Gone. Point 84 addresses the concerns regarding bin store and antisocial behaviour. The mitigation outlined is not ideal, with antisocial behaviour being addressed after the fact. It's already happened. It's responsive and not preventative. I noted the concerns from other recent developments on the minutes of this report, and the properties highlight antisocial behaviour as a concern. Point 87 states there would be no direct overlooking between balconies on the flats and the windows of neighbouring houses for the new residents, but it seems in these circumstances it is deemed acceptable to provide a good standard of living to new residents, but what about the existing residents and the quality of life they have? That's the end of that statement.
Thank you for reading that out, guys. Now I call, and apologies if I get the pronunciation of his surname wrong, but Marie Stopinski-Wheeler. Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much for having me this evening. There are a couple of areas that I wanted to raise from the report that's been sent out and highlight the concerns that I have. Point 5 in the description section, it notes that there is the entrance to the flats will be on Chamberlain Road. I want to know whether consideration has been given to the door entry system, which I'm assuming will be in place for access to the flats, because this could have an impact on my neighbours. In the section of report under the highways, under point 23, the plan says parking has been assessed, will be accessed from the right-hand side. I would ask how you're going to monitor and manage that, because currently people from the colleges, the school, use the various service roads as RAT runs from Cherbourg through to Derby Road. So, you know, there's no way that you can stipulate that people are going to use that entrance way. Secondly, under point 26 under this section, you already note in your information, Rebecca, about it not meeting the parking standards set by Eastleigh Borough Council. You can't control the number of cars that households are going to have. You can't say you can't have cars if you're living here. And you're saying you can't have permits. But my query there is, what about disabled parking? Because if someone is in a ground floor flat, potentially are going to be a blue badge holder. So where are they going to park if it's unallocated parking? Because there doesn't appear to be anything about that within the notes that I've read. Point 63 to 65 about the layout and design. You talk about the materials that are being used and the visual interest that they're going to cause. I would question and challenge whether it actually meets the benefit or mixes in with what was already there. No, it doesn't. It's obtrusive, bright, and doesn't meet what we currently have. And further along, and you mentioned about flats as well. The other thing I would say is that the one on Desborough, on the corner of Derby and Desborough, you have flats there. Their outlook is onto the school across Derby Road, and outlook's onto the church the other side. So it doesn't face properties at all. So I would ask you just to consider that. And finally, with regard to the amenities, I note in there that there is a change to the Juliet balconies, but doors are still going to be open, which will impact neighbours because there's going to be, a wider space, and people will be using, according to the notes, the patio area on the ground floor, which will also impact because typically people don't sit and engage in their front gardens, they would use their back gardens. So I would ask the councillors please to reject this and look at a more suitable option for myself and my neighbours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie. Now call Sam Johnson.
Thank you very much. Samuel Johnson, Conservative Party Parliamentary Candidate for Eastleigh. I'd first of all like to thank the committee here this evening and all the residents that have expressed their views so far, of which I wholeheartedly endorse. However, my objection today is not one of technicalities, it is one of principle, and one that I present to the committee on that basis. It is a long-standing principle of British democracy that people should have power over the decisions of the elected that impact their lives. This principle is imbued in centuries of planning law, looking most recently the 1990 Town and Planning Act, more recently than that, the 2008 Planning Act. Legislation brought in from political parties of all stripes. Indeed, most recently, the party leader of those that make up the bulk of the committee today, Ed Davey, on Sunday, and I don't normally quote him, but I will today, said that he supports community-led planning. Specifically, he said local residents should be involved in the whole decision-making process around new housing, and you need to take the community with you. Regardless of our politics, it is quite clear this evening that the local community and the local residents are against this application, and therefore I call on the members of the committee to take their role in British democracy and to listen to the very strong expressions made this evening. I would also build on this call for the reason that I think that the threshold to listen to local residents is even higher in this circumstance, given that the entity making the submission, and I'm not accusing anyone of any wrongdoing, I'm just putting it on the table, is an Eastleigh Borough Council-owned entity, or at least on the 26th of July 2017, a statement was made to Companies House that Aspect Eastleigh Limited was an entity of which the Eastleigh Borough Council had a right to exercise or actually exercises significant influence. And I'm not suggesting there's a conflict of interest there, but I'm just saying in the principles of English law, it is reasonable, therefore, that your threshold for accepting residents' concerns is even higher than it would otherwise be. I'd like to thank everybody here this evening for respectfully making their views from all perspectives. I'm not standing here from a political party angle, I'm standing here on behalf of British democracy, and I'd like to thank everyone this evening for making such a powerful case against this development. Thank you very much.
I now call David Huckfield to speak in support. Planning application.
Tilt that a little bit, thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address the committee this evening. I'm David Huckfield, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant this evening. The case officer has given a very detailed presentation covering the planning policy position and the material considerations that are relevant to the application that is before you. It's not my intention to go over this again in too much detail, or I thought it would be useful to give some background to the proposals and how we've got to where we are now with the scheme. So the submission of this planning application has followed a comprehensive pre-application process with the local planning authority, their urban design team and other key stakeholders and statutory consultees. The applicant has also undertaken an extensive programme of public engagement with local residents, which has included workshop sessions, publication of materials on a dedicated web page, as well as formal public consultation exercise prior to the application being submitted. This process has taken place over a number of months, and the range of feedback received has fed into the form, design and evolution of the scheme. That process, as we've seen and heard tonight, involved the consideration of a range of different options and design approaches for the redevelopment of this site. These options included an initial scheme for a large number of flats, a proposal without car parking, as well as an option which explored the possibility of having flats on Derby Road and houses along Chamberlain Road, which was specifically referred to earlier on. These options, however, were discounted for a variety of reasons. In the case of the latter, and as the case officer has explained earlier on in the presentation, there were amenity-related concerns that were raised through the pre-application process about not being able to achieve an acceptable relationship between the proposed flats and both the proposed and existing houses owing to the shape and constraints of the site. In addition, the Council of Urban Designers raised concerns about the impacts on the street scene and identified a desire for a building that appropriately addresses the prominent junction at which it sits and turns the corner effectively to provide active frontages to both Derby Road and Chamberlain Road. An appropriately designed block of flats in this position readily enables this to be achieved. The flats in this case, along with the remainder of the scheme, have been designed following a thorough appraisal of the site's context to ensure that it is appropriate for its setting in scale, form and appearance, and also that it meets the requirements of the relevant planning policies and guidance in respect to the amenity of both future and existing residents. As the committee members will know, planning is often very much about balance, and the scheme that you now have before you, we feel, best balances the range of feedback we've received for the public consultation and pre-application process with what are the overarching local and national planning policy provisions against which the application must ultimately be assessed. Amongst other things, these notably include the need to make efficient use of brownfield land for the delivery of housing, ensure that that housing includes an appropriate mix of units, to maximise densities in the most sustainable and well-connected parts of the borough, while still respecting the character of the area and residential amenity. This balance also extends to the car parking provisions for the scheme, which have taken account of the importance of providing on-site parking, which came across in the resident and stakeholder feedback at pre-application stage, with the aforementioned need to make efficient use of land, and notably the very sustainable location of the site, and the recognition of this within the Council's parking standards, which allows for flexibility within central Eastleigh. The scheme would additionally also provide for a range of other benefits. This notably includes the provision of much-needed affordable housing, with the scheme intending to deliver 100% affordable provision, well above and beyond the Council's standard 35% policy requirement. This would include a good mix of flats and houses of 1, 2 and 3 bedrooms in size, with it being noted that the 2 and 3 bed provision in particular has been welcomed by the Council's housing officer due to demand in the locality. In addition, the scheme will provide for developer contributions towards public art, public open space and community infrastructure improvements from the local area. A net gain for biodiversity would also be achieved through a detailed landscaping scheme, and the proposals will provide for higher than normal water efficiency provisions, as well as including low to zero carbon technologies, including ground source heat pumps and solar panels, with electric vehicle charging points also available for all car parking spaces, minimising the impacts of the development on the environment. The applicant has also committed to undertaking improvements to the planters and adjoining surfacing at the end of Chamberlain Road in order to enhance the public realm around the site. As set out in the agenda, the scheme has been positively received by the Council's urban designer, and there are no objections from any of the consultees, subject to conditions which the applicant is agreeable to. We would therefore endorse the Planning Officer's recommendation and hope the committee will do the same this evening. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, and thank you to you all for coming along and participating. I now open it up to councillors for questions. Councillor Irish.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little bit puzzled tonight. I heard Rebecca say that we can't have houses in Chamberlain Road because of the parking in front of them, but when you go down Chamberlain Road, there's parking in front of all the houses. And I find that rather strange. Can you explain why you object to the parking? Because parking's outside every house in Chamberlain Road.
It wasn't as such that you can't have parking in front. What I was saying, I'm just trying to find the site, is that the way that this was designed was to have the houses set back, but then that area in front of those houses would be hard surface parking and not the most attractive frontage. So I'm not saying you can't have parking in front of houses, I'm just saying that was considered to be a poor design feature of that scheme.
for that. So therefore, would you say then that houses are possible to be put in Chamberlain Road?
Sorry, are or aren't possible?
Are
Sorry.
possible to be put in.
I'm not here to answer whether you could put them there. I'm saying that the previous schemes we've considered with housing facing Chamberlain Road were not considered to be acceptable and not taken forward. I've assessed, or planning officers have assessed the scheme that we've had in front of us and determined it to be acceptable.
Councillor Dedhia.
Following that, it says building would not address the corner well, build right up to side edges. Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the elevations to hand here, but if you see the block of flats, this particular proposal, and I'm stressing this is just one example of a proposal put forward, had the stairwell element here right on the edge of the site. So in terms of designing an attractive kind of stairwell on a corner of a plot would not have been a particularly attractive feature. So from an urban design perspective, it's better to have an active frontage with windows or balconies or an entrance, for example, not a stairwell.
Councillor Spencer.
Just a question about the overall roof design of the building. The flat roof's obviously been brought up a couple of times, and it's presumably that way to keep it at that 2.5-storey level, so it's not overlooking. I do have some quite serious concerns about the flat roof, just from a pure design perspective. And I'd just like to know if anything was considered alternatively, if your actual roof's like the rest of the Chamberlain Road, just what was the reasoning behind the flat roof ultimately?
So just to reiterate, the consideration we've done is considered whether this scheme put forward to us is acceptable or not. So this is how this was presented. There are examples of flat roof buildings in the wider area, so having a flat roof building wasn't considered to be inappropriate. This scheme was carefully considered by the council's urban design officer, who felt that this was an appropriate solution and did respect the scale of the adjacent houses. So the flat roof allows you to get the 3 stories of development, but without having that additional height, which is kind of what you said. So it creates a sort of more efficient building, but of a design that is considered to be suitable in this area.
Councillor Beer.
The slide we were looking at a second ago, is that the one that the working group felt that was acceptable? No.
They were changed after we finished doing the working group.
Do we have any? Okay.
I wasn't involved at that stage, so.
This was our point. Sorry.
I'm sorry, now that we've gone into questions, we can't have anything else from the... Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Chair. I keep hearing, excuse me, the word towering as if it's a towering building. Can you just confirm how much that entrance towers over the flats and perhaps over the houses alongside in the road? Yeah, did you say 0.5 metre?
Yeah, so the difference in height between these houses here on Chamberlain Road and the flats here is about 0.5 metre. But then there's an extra height to the element.
How much?
Maximum height's 10.1. So sorry. Okay, so the height here is 9 metres, then goes up another metre here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just ask a second question about the parking? I accept that it's less than councils would normally provide. And there are, I understand, 2 spaces for disabled parking if that was required. Can I ask why they're unallocated? Why are they not allocated to particular flats? Because I just wonder if that could cause problems with somebody parking 2 cars or 3 cars and others not getting in at all.
Whether or not the parking would be allocated would actually be the choice of the developer, and in this case that's how they've proposed it to be unallocated. So it would be managed through the sale of the properties, you know, in terms of who the parking is available for.
Okay, thank you.
Darshan.
So once the property is being sold, and there's no allocated parking or anything, so who's going to be responsible for all the problems that are caused by parking then?
Do you mean inside or outside the site? Do you mean problems?
Even on site, yeah.
On site would become the responsibility of whoever manages the site, so that wouldn't be a planning consideration at this stage. In terms of the impacts off the site, that's, you know, we've taken into account that impact. We've had the comments of the local highway authority, and they did not raise an objection to overspill parking.
Councillor Dedhia.
My kind of follows up Councillor Mann's question. So if the parking is allocated, how do we assure that disabled parking base goes to the person who deserves? And if the sales go way and that is, if that makes sense, just getting into my head where you said the parking bay will be sold according to the flats by developer.
As I said, the scheme that's been put forward to us is that all of the parking there would be unallocated. So it would be for the site owners to manage and distribute, I suppose, the parking and how it is taken forward from that point.
Is it worth just clarification on the disabled parking? If there are 2 spaces for disabled parking, they will be retained for disabled parking for any of the potential users of those flats. So just to clarify, the disabled element would be retained as disabled.
Do we have any further questions before we move on to debate? No, councillors? Go ahead, Councillor Reynolds.
Did I hear right, do I remember correctly, that electric points are available for all the parking spaces?
I believe that's a proposal, yeah. Yeah.
Councillor Dedhia.
A lot of talk from public about blending an existing character to Chamberlain Road, even while all the flats are designed out there. Was that consideration during planning about maintaining the existing character?
Yeah, I mean, the report as it's been provided to you sets out the consideration that's been given to the design and how it relates to the surrounding development. It's been endorsed as well by the council's urban design officer. You know, it's not directly replicating the terraced housing, and that's completely acknowledged. But it's not necessary to replicate existing development. There will be new development, and provided it's designed of a form and scale that can fit comfortably within that street scene, then it can be acceptable, and that's the determination that's been reached in this case.
Councillor Reynolds.
Okay, the other point, somebody, I'm trying to find the name of the resident here. It was to do with sewage. Oh, it was Mr. Everett, wasn't it, that mentioned sewage and the smell around the site. Are the planners confident that that's being controlled or will be controlled? Because that sounds quite a worry.
We've consulted, through this process, we consulted the Hampshire local lead flood authority and Southern Water. We received no objection from Southern Water from the outset, but we did receive concerns from the lead flood authority initially, and they raised a number of questions, and one of them was that they understood there to be a blockage in the current system. So further information was sought from the applicants and their drainage consultants, and that was provided. And the point that was raised was that there would be a full investigation of the sewage system, and if there was a damaged or pipe that was inappropriate, it would be repaired or replaced. And on that basis, the local flood authorities removed their objection.
Okay, thank you for that.
Councillor Mann?
Why couldn't we have a pitched roof? No, I mean, it's only 3-story high. It wouldn't make a lot of difference, but it would match in with the rest of the properties. May it be about a meter or so higher than the other ones. Being on the corner, it would look much better.
I mean, do you mean a pitched roof instead of the flat roof, so an increase in height of that building with a pitched roof? I mean, without seeing how that would actually look on plan, I can't comment on whether that would be acceptable or not, but I've considered the scheme put before me.
I think we've come to the end of questions. Everybody asked all their questions? Okay, so do I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Beer. Now we move on to debate. Councillor Irish.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm very disappointed this evening because I've come here tonight looking at a plan that could be really good for the residents of Chamberlain Road, with having houses in Chamberlain Road and flats in Derby Road. And, you know, I could not support that because it's logical, isn't it? You've got houses in Chamberlain Road, let's finish off the terrace of houses and let's put our flats in Derby Road with hopefully a pitched roof and not a flat roof. And therefore, Chair, I would like to move an amendment. And my amendment would be that we defer this application this evening and we ask our planners to go away and look at an alternative plan that accommodates houses in Chamberlain Road, accommodates flats in Derby Road, and accommodates a pitched roof. All the things that make perfect sense. And that would be my amendment tonight. And if we don't accept my amendment tonight, Chair, then I cannot support what's on the table tonight. Thank you.
I think such an amendment would be considered a really significant change. So we can't really move on an amendment. It would have to be denied on proper planning guidelines for that to happen.
So I couldn't make that a recommendation then, Chair?
I think it is such a significant change. It's not something that can be amendment. It would have to be a brand new scheme to encompass those changes.
Why can't we have that then?
Well, we would, if you want that, we have to deny it with proper planning under proper planning guidelines, and then the applicant would then.
So we have to refuse and go back again.
If that's what you want.
Okay,
yes, yeah.
Well, that's fine by me.
Any other councillors? Councillor Dedhia?
I do agree a bit with Councillor Irish about the planning not being the greatest. There's so much issues. Some of the issues are again parking, the unallocated parking as well, the community impact, and although it got clear of a sewage impact, there's still an issue there as well. So I am also concerned, and furthermore, I know it's not a truly all planning application, but the impact it might have on community as such. So I am concerned about this development, and I would also personally would deny it if it could.
Yeah, I'm having great difficulty with this one. I understand everything everybody has said here tonight, but I also have this, you have to balance things, and I also have this desire for affordable housing. I think we do have to maximise the density. It's a small plot, but there is such a demand for housing in Eastleigh, for affordable housing, that, you know, this is where I'm struggling. where to come down at the moment, and I've made loads of notes. I'm trying to balance all the comments that we've heard. I mean, somebody said about it would detract from the community spirit, I think one lady said. I think that we talk about inclusivity these days, and people living in the flats and the new houses should be brought into the community. Doesn't really matter if they're on facing Derby Road or Chamberlain Road. You know, they're people, they should be inclusive in the society, in the community. So I'm thinking, I want to see community cohesion more and more. It's a difficult one, and I really need to give it more consideration. I can't just come down on one side or the other at the moment, so I'll listen to the other councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillor Mann?
Yeah, I'm struggling to come to terms with it as well, because it doesn't look that it's like Rosemary said, that it doesn't come into the community. It's something completely different. So I'm not all that keen on it.
Councillor Spencer.
I'll start off with some positives.
Are there any?
I appreciate the ambition with this scheme. Full affordability, very high density, is incredibly good, and I'm glad that officers are putting these kind of things forward. It's very positive. I like the amount of consultation which has gone through with residents. It clearly hasn't turned out how a lot of people planned, but I'd like to think that both parties have worked together to come to a decent conclusion in good faith. I think that's quite positive, but I can't help thinking that it's just fundamentally flawed. I would like to see houses on Chamberlain, and I'd like to see flats on Derby Road, ultimately. And I think because there is a considerable amount of space here, I think with a decent amount of work, a good scheme could come forward. So I am, at this stage, leaning towards rejecting the application and going back to drawing board.
Do we have any other councillors who want to say anything? Councillor Beer?
I suppose in some ways I echo Councillor Spencer in terms of I think that having affordable housing is needed hugely. I think that my concerns are what echo a lot of other people have said in terms of the idea of sewage. I've kind of had some dealings with Southern Water about blocked drains and all the rest of it, and that's been painful and taken several years of my life. And I do accept that it does look somewhat like an office block if you squint at it. And I can imagine how I'd feel if that was opposite my house. And I don't know if it does blend into the local surroundings. I can see why there is a lot of residents here with a lot of concerns. Yes, not really a discussion, more of a comment. Apologies.
Well, that's all part of debate. For myself, I like this scheme because we have a housing list and we really do need it, and it's going to be social housing, it's going to be affordable housing, it's close enough to the town centre that I'm not worried about the parking. We want to try and dissuade people from having cars anyway. I do understand the concerns of the look and the feel of it, and I'm listening to all the other councillors, but the principle of having housing there, social housing, and we need to maximise the amount of value we can get from that site, because we're responsible for the budget for the whole of the town, and we can't just put houses on there which will not provide enough value, which will mean that at the end of the day people's council taxes bills go up, because we have to we've got to get the maximum possible value out of each site. So I am very conflicted myself on this, but the principle of having affordable housing there, if we go away and ask them to come up with a different option, it may become that it's an unviable site if they can't fit in the appropriate amount of accommodation there for people. So I'm very conflicted with this. So yeah, those are my comments. Any? I'm sorry, we can't.
Why don't you move the parking from the front to the back to the houses that were on Chamberlain Road in the first place and flats on the side? Easy.
Councillor.
Chair, I totally agree with you about the need for housing. I mean, nobody is more keen than me. I get constant people coming to me each week that haven't got anywhere to live and they're desperate for housing, and I really try and support them and see if I can find them housing. It's greatly needed, but I think you've got to weigh it up against the environment of the people in the area and how the people in that area have got to be living with that. And I don't think the people in Chamberlain Road can live with those flats, as awful as they do look, when they could have nice terrace houses there and flats on the other side. So it's a great shame, Chair, because I think we could have a good scheme, but this is not a good scheme. Thank you.
Do we have any other debate?
I'd just like to say that I think the council have actually sort of taken all the comments on board, and, you know, the spaces between the flats are all as they should be. I understand it. But, you know, the road spaces, how can I put this? The distance between the flats and the current houses there. And it all fits with the National Planning Policy Framework. Everything seems to be as it should be. I don't know that I go with the fact that it doesn't fit in with the older houses, because I think in every town and village you have old and new. So, and yet, if I lived there, would I not like it? And then I think, well, I've got houses right at the back of me, and it's just, you know, you want a house, you buy a house. Sorry, I'm not making myself very clear here, so I'm still conflicted. Okay, thanks.
It's worth pointing out that anything that, if we do decide to turn this down, we have got to have valid planning reasons for it. We can't. Yes. Yeah, and I was just sort of reiterating that. Did you have your hand up, Councillor Spencer?
Just to kind of echo what you've said, Councillor Park, I think density on this site is going to be very important, and I think if hypothetically this was rejected tonight, I'd be quite interested to see some schemes where perhaps it was all flats, but maybe 1.5 storey or something equivalent to that. So the density is still there, but it just looks in keeping with the rest of the area. I've had the picture of Sovereign Place in front of me pretty much the entire time. And it does the job. So obviously, if it is rejected, there'll be plenty of options, and planners will come up with what they think is best. But as Councillor Irish said, I don't think this is it. There's a better way to do it, I think, which can get the level of density and social housing which the area needs, but is in better keeping with the current environment.
Any other debate?
I'd just say that if we turn it down, I'm really worried that a brownfield site will go to waste. It won't. Do you think so? I mean, you know, because if you don't put on high density housing, you're not getting the best out of that brownfield site.
I'm sorry, we can't have anything else. I understand the frustrations. You've had a chance to say we're having our debate, and then we'll get to a decision. All right. I do understand the strength of feeling. All right. There are processes and procedures that we have to stick to. Okay. I don't think we've got anybody else who wishes to add to the debate. Is that right? Councillor Irish.
Can we have a recorded vote, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we are still voting on the officer's recommendation as it stands, and if we do decide to refuse it, we're going to then need to come up with some refusals that fit with the planning regs, and obviously council officers will help with that. So, as it seems clear, we've come to the end of the debate, so I'd like all those in favour to record a vote. Yeah.
Okay, councillors, I will say your name, and if you can just say whether you are in agreement or whether you are against the proposal. Councillor Bhavin?
Against.
I think I'd vote for.
Councillor Mann? Councillor Irish? Yes. Councillor Spencer? Councillor Beer? And Councillor Park?
I would vote for.
Thank you.
So I think that's clearly been voted against, so we need to come up with some valid planning reasons for why not. Do we have anything from councillors that they want to? Sorry, I think Wayne wanted to go first.
Firstly, I think it's out of character with the existing area. I think that's one thing we can say. The design of the flats with the flat roof is really not an acceptable design. I'm sure we can do better than that. And it's just going to be a terrible impact on those living in the area. And I just feel that those are some, and I'm sure my colleagues can come up with some other ones as well.
Did you want to speak, Councillor Dedhia?
Yeah, sorry, I agree with the character bit. There's also about the parking as well. I know the unallocated parking and the lack of parking spaces, that doesn't meet as well, even the town centre issue. I think that about it, rest was covered as well.
Councillor Spencer.
I think the fundamental thing is that I don't feel that it's compliant with the quality spaces policy that we have on the books. I might be wrong about that, but that's how I feel personally. And yes, there's a lot of questions about parking, which I don't think have been properly addressed, although I do appreciate that the scheme has made the best effort to fit in as many parking spaces as it could on quite a limited bit of space.
Okay, I've listened to all of the various issues and the notes that have come forward. I've drafted a reason for refusal that might cover those. So if I just read out some text, and if you want to, add or suggest some additions. The proposed three-storey block of flats fronting Chamberlain Road would be out of keeping with the scale, form and appearance of the adjacent two-storey terraced housing and resulted in unacceptable impact on amenities of neighbouring residents as a result of loss of privacy from overlooking. At the moment, I've said the development would be contrary to policy DM1. We could add in the quality places SPD to that. And then if we did want to go down the parking, I think that would have to be a separate reason for refusal. But I would just emphasise that our parking SPD does allow for reduced parking in town centres, and that would be a difficult one. But
can I just, I think that we all agree that the density is required. And, with density comes parking, and I do agree that the parking is under what we would normally be looking for, but I worry rejecting it on a parking basis is not, would force it. I don't think that if something came forward that was more in keeping with a higher quality, that we would be acceptable. I think that we would be looking at that quite,
you would accept lower parking if it was better?
Absolutely that, thank you.
So I don't think it would probably valid not to include the parking as a consideration.
I was going to say nearly exact same thing. There's plenty of public transport along that route. There's 2 train stations which are in kind of walkable distance. So yes, exactly as Councillor Beer said, if a proper scheme came forward with even less parking than what's being considered there, I would consider that in a favourable way. So I wouldn't not include parking in this particular scheme.
did you want me to read that out again with the notes from what we've just said? So The proposed three-storey block of flats fronting Chamberlain Road would be out of keeping with the scale, form and appearance of the adjacent two-storey terraced housing and result in an unacceptable impact on the amenities of neighbouring residents as a result of loss of privacy from overlooking. The development would therefore be contrary to policy DM1 of the Eastleigh Borough Local Plan and the Quality Places SPD.
We need to vote. Sorry, we need to vote on that objection. Do we? Are we all happy with that? Can we have people vote in favour of the? Oh, sorry. We need to, so, forgive me. This is my first time. So, I need a proposer. Thank you. I need a seconder. I'm sorry. Councillor Dedhia seconded that. So, all in favour? That's refused. Now we move on to item 8.
Scheme that suits everybody.
I'm sure we're not going to stop the consultation. Yeah. Let's have a 5-minute comfort break and somebody can go and wake Paul up. Councillors, shall we get back onto the agenda? So now we come to item 8, planning application for 14 High Street, Eastleigh, SO55, LA, and that's pages 53 to 60 of the report. I now ask Rebecca Altman to present the report.
Thank you. Hopefully a fairly straightforward proposal. The reason this one is at committee is because it's a Eastleigh Borough Council scheme. So the application relates to the site of 14 High Street, which has had planning permission for a development of commercial units and flats above. And this proposal is to put a substation to serve, electric substation to serve that development. And that's shown on the location there where the substation would go, which would be just fronting Wells Road. That's just a slightly clearer indication of the site layout that's been approved and where the substation would go in relation to that. And some elevations and floor plan of that particular substation. So it's a fairly modest size structure, and it would be entirely enclosed within that brick-built and tiled roofed structure. And just a photograph, this was probably taken back in August, so it's probably gone up more so since then, but that's showing the approximate position of the substation in relation to the buildings that are going up. It is required to serve the development, so without it, the development wouldn't be possible to complete. So that's the principle of it is sound. The size and the scale of it is considered to be acceptable, and it's going to be built in materials to complement that building that it's next to. And there's also been various information provided for the environmental health officers for them to be satisfied that there would be no adverse noise or vibration impact. So their recommendation is for permission.
Thank you, Rebecca. Do we have any questions from councillors? None at all? Okay. So do I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Beer. And a seconder? Councillor Bicknell. Let him have some participation, seeing as he's had a little snooze. Is there any debate? Councillor Bicknell.
Thank you, Chair. It's not really debate per se, but at the end of the day, this is fairly straightforward. It is what it says on the tin. Happy to accept it. Move on. Next item.
Thanks for your permission there, Councillor Bicknell. Anybody else for debate? No. Okay. Can I ask all those in favour, please? That's clearly carried. Thank you. Now we move on to item 9, the air quality update. Can I ask Neil to introduce the report?
Oh, hang on. We've got the connection.
He's off sick, unfortunately, so I'm on my own.
Do you need to come over here to connect?
Yeah.
So just while Roxana is setting up, I understand that Neil is off sick at the moment, so you're going to present the report, which you will do once you've got everything connected.
So, as I said, Neil is off sick, so I will be representing the quality update within the area. And I will start with introducing myself. I've recently joined the council at the very end of July as a pollution control specialist with the particular interest in air quality, and that's my responsibility since then. The structure of my presentation is I will present the monitoring data within the area and Eastleigh in the form of the continuous monitoring and the passive monitoring in the form of diffusion tubes. We'll also talk about some update with the quality action plan and the projects we currently carry on within the council and our department. This is a context I will be presenting our data against. There is a air quality objectives for nitrogen dioxide particulates with a fraction PM10 and PM2.5, which is a diameter of the particulate of 10 and 2.5 micron. Presumably you're aware about the health disbenefits of both fractions, but let me know if you would like me to dwell on it and explain a little bit more. The current objectives are annual or long-term objectives for nitrogen dioxide as 40 microgram per cubic meter, and the same for PM10. For PM2.5 is 20 microgram per cubic meter. DEFRA set up the targets to achieve 10 microgram per cubic meter by 2040, with the exposure reduction targets leading up to the date. There are two air quality management areas within Eastleigh Borough Council which were declared on exceedance of nitrogen dioxide, which is the first one runs along A335 and the other one is along M3. And as I already mentioned, they're linked to the exceedance of nitrogen dioxide concentrations about 20 years ago, and then were updated in 2015. We have monitoring, there are 3 monitoring continuous monitors within Eastleigh Borough Council, and that's the location of the quality management areas, as I mentioned, not quite sure what, and the number 1 is the green one, and the number 2 is in blue, and alongside it's also allocated the passive monitoring in the form of diffusion tubes, which I will be talking about. Last time, my colleague Neil presented the averages for 2022 and collected by the continuous monitors, and we have no exceedances of the annual objectives. They all are within the limits. However, the data capture was quite low for Southampton Road Analyzer, and they still close. The point was 99.2 0, which is within the requirements, and the DEFRA recommends 75 to consider it acceptable. There were no short-term daily exceedances for the last year, which is 200 microgram per cubic meter for within any of the monitoring locations. This year, the 2 monitors at Southampton Road and the Point run quite reliably, as you can see on the graph, which represent the annual averages from December until the start of September, when the report was written, and you can see that the Point, as expected, shows slightly lower concentration of nitrogen dioxide in comparison to the Southampton Road analyzer. We had some issues with the steel close analyzer and obtaining the parts for it. However, this has been resolved and the parts been installed back in August. We are waiting for the calibration so the data can be disseminated to the public. These are the averages for the period, and they are for information only because the data needs to be ratified based on the 12-month period of averaging. So at the moment, for Southampton Road, we have 25.4 microgram per cubic meter, which is still quite below the annual objective. And the Point shows us, demonstrate 18 microgram per cubic meter. We have not recorded any exceedances of the short-term averages. We also have several locations within the local area, and for comparison, we have supplied the data. We present the data for 2022 annual averages at the locations with the 7 months averages. However, this data appears slightly higher than the last year, but it's not been unadjusted. There is a very, very robust process to go through annualization and then comparison with the national objectives. And again, this can be done on the 12 months monitoring, and we don't, if less than 75% of the 12 months monitors collected, it needs to be annualized and then to be compared with the national air quality objectives. So at the moment, 2 monitoring locations show slight concern at Southampton Road and Lee Road Junction 13, and they're highlighted in black where the objectives have not been met. But we still have a few months to go to compare. The data, the air quality data is seasonal, so we are expecting to see slightly higher results in the colder and wetter months of the year. So it's winter and autumn and the start of spring, and then it dips down in the summer and then goes up, back up. So, but we need to see the full picture. 3 locations which we have reported previously show no concern. To inform or support my previous statement about the seasonal variability of data, this shows that we started high, and the diffusion tubes concentration were declining over time from January to July. We have compared the data with the previous 10 years. As I said, we cannot confidently say that, for example, at Lee Road and Southampton Road, the readings are going up because they have not been averaged for 12 months and they have not bias adjusted. However, this is the current trend which are represented over the, where we are comparing in the dotted lines of 7 months averages with 10 years averages averaged for the locations within the area. I would also highlight the averages for the particulars monitoring for PM10 and PM2.5. Last year, when we collected the data, it was 14.1 for PM10 and 6.6 for PM2.5. However, the data capture was quite low, which was due to the some technical issues. The monitor was off for quite a significant period of time. This year, the data capture was much better for particulates, and the averages for PM10 were recorded for the period of 16.5 and 8 for PM2.5. As you can see, it's slightly higher than last year averages. We still don't have, we still not collected the full 12 months monitoring period. We have, this is how it's, how averages look like, so it's clearly, what I would say about this graph is you can see that PM2.5 is a part of the PM10 fracture, so it's always have to be lower than PM10 readings. And if you can see spikes above, it means that something wrong with the monitor, and that's how I would read and question the supplier what's going on. Spikes show obvious some elevations, hourly elevations. However, when they're averaged for 24 hours, we can only see that for PM10 we had a single 24-hour average exceedance above the national objective, and for PM2.5 we only have long-term or 24 annual average national objective. Therefore, I've put 2 lines there for information only, which demonstrate the limits for the WHO, World Health Organization target limits. As you're probably aware, the World Health Organization updated their guidance suggesting that it's 5 microgram per cubic meter. In the UK, at the moment it's 20, and we're aiming for 10 by 2040, as I mentioned before. However, there are interim targets set up by the World Health Organization, which are used here. The targets 4 and 2, which is 50 and 35 microgram per cubic meter in average. So we have a few exceedances for the 35. Yeah. Over there. Yeah, I think I put there. Yeah, 25, that's wrong. Not quite sure why it's there. It should be 35. So we have a few exceedances of, no, we don't have any exceedances for PM2, 2.5, and a single exceedance for the short-term average for PM10 within the borough. I will talk a little bit about the air quality projects within the local area. One of them is a Swiss Trans school project, and it aims to support cycling to school, raise awareness of air pollution, and support infrastructure. In this year, a bike shed or the cycling port was installed in Toynbee School, And last Thursday there was an opening ceremony, and this is how it looked like. Quite happy children with their ability to park their bikes when they're cycling to school. So since the start of the project, first of all, it was delayed, and the equality officer was appointed in May. Since then, she contacted an infant school, 10 primary, 5 secondary school. Toynbee was one of them, and where the bike shed was installed. 3 schools were visited, and they've explained the importance of the equality, and the knowledge was in general promoted within those schools, and how it should be run. They should be given an incentive to promote this knowledge and to promote walking and cycling within the area, as well as the knowledge share with the parents and carers within the school. Another project is, we call it My Burning. It's raising awareness about the impact of the particulates when people are using solid fuels. This is the example of the flyer, which is just, this is a new design which will be distributed this year. This is in conjunction to a few other councils within the area. And I believe we are aiming to extend this project until next year, when Southampton City Council will receive a confirmation from DEFRA. The taxi scheme, which was reported previously, is now closed. However, I think we still have some money in a port available, so we might still be doing something separate from Southampton City Council. And yeah, that's probably my part of the, any questions?
Thank you. Before we go to questions, we've got Simon Payne, who wishes to speak.
Okay. Chair, Councillors, yeah, I've read through the report before you this evening. I had the following observations. I want to be clear, I'm not criticising the officers, as they have a difficult job to do with very limited resources. But does this report really make it clear what is happening with air quality in Eastleigh? You know, does the public out there really know what is happening, you know, like that? And you know, there's some confusion within this report that I certainly am finding. So at point 6, 2022 data is mentioned, has been ratified and shows no exceedance of the annual limits at the continuous monitoring site. But then we get told, oh, but actually that was only a 25%, you know, only used for 25%. So actually, how was it ratified? Because at 25%, it's not acceptable. Like that, again, no mention of the 34% capture within that particular comment on the report. The tube data download does not show any bias adjustment for 2022. I know I've just seen it here, but again, in your report pack, unless it's different online, there's no mention of those 2022 bias adjustments like that. So again, you know, Southampton Road, you know, 1, the annual reading was 42.9 last year, like that. Now, obviously, now it looks like there are some adjustments here, but again, the report here, the public report, does not show that. In terms of 2023, the report says 25.4% for nitrogen dioxide with 41% capture at Southampton Road. Yeah, if you go online, you can actually download, you know, the analyzer information. Now, you know, you can also call up the annual report for so far for this year, which is now saying it's 26% with a 73% capture rate. So what's right is, are we a 41% capture or are we a 73% capture? Really, by this point of the year, we should be 73 capture is probably right for, you know, for this time of the year. I appreciate there's a few days between this report, you know, that you've got, you know, between that and, you know, when I've looked on the analyzer, but it would not account for that amount of difference. If we look at the tube data, it shows us 44.3 from January to July this year, again at Southampton Road 1. Last year, it was 40.4 for the same months. Now, again, the tubes have gone missing for 2 months. Unfortunately, they're not being put up very high at all. You can easily go, and if someone wanted to, they're just going to take them off the lampposts. But, obviously, so we've got that one shown at 44.3, but if we take the tubes out the analyzer, now, I know exactly where that analyzer is, because Southampton Road one is just past my house on the lamppost. The analyzer is probably 100 metres or 200 metres up the road. Yet, at the analyzer, they're showing an average of 34.4. So, but the analyzer itself is showing 26. So why is there such a big difference? Likewise, why is it 34.4 at machine tubes, but 44.3 down the road? The analyzer site is actually now covered by a very big tree. Is that now impacting that machine and its readings? Because, the tree coverage across the top. And then if we come onto the action plan like that, obviously, we go through the various points in there, but obviously the first one there was the EMV3, which is obviously about the electrical vehicles like that. The data refers to July 2022. What has been used since then? Is there an uptake or not? TR 4.3, you probably all noticed recently, the buses in town are no longer blue. Quite often they're green or red. Blue Star have currently been lending some of their fleet out elsewhere, and actually we've now got older vehicles in place. Some of these are actually between 15 and 19 years old. So actually, does that action now need reinstating, or is Blue Star going to make sure we do have Euro 6 engines in this area? EC 1.4, battery-powered hand tools, are they still being used? The reason I asked that is because I was at an allotments meeting the other day, and someone mentioned to me that they've been talking with the teams out there, and they said that they've actually stopped using the battery-powered ones because they were not powerful enough, and the batteries were always discharging. So have we actually gone back to petrol now? In conclusion, I ask you councillors, what in this action plan is actually going to deliver a reduction in the poor air quality in our town? In one 24-hour period this year, Southampton Road averaged 66.6, measured on the analyzer, which again, might even be low. Is this really acceptable? Outdoor pollutants are estimated to contribute towards 40,000 premature deaths in the UK per year. In the past, air quality has been mentioned at this committee and has always been said, it's always comes last in the agenda, but actually we should bring it forward. And we should have a proper evening on it, or really go through it. That's never ever happened. Now, I can't set your agenda, but is that something that this committee could possibly consider, is actually really take on air quality and really look at it? Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Do you want to respond to anything there?
There are several points. I guess the difference between the analyzer and the Southampton Road, in my opinion, it could be, first of all, for this year, as I said, we had ratified bias-adjusted data for last year, averaged for 12 months. This year, we have only data for 7 months for the diffusion tubes, which have not been bias-adjusted. Therefore, it's still an earlier day to compare last year with this year. However, I've presented the data comparing with the previous 10 years, and I'm happy to do have also presented in the report the rolling averages, where we have averaged 3 years in a row, excluding 2020. You're saying that the diffusion tubes can go missing because they are too low. You're absolutely right. However, if we put them anywhere higher, it won't be representative for the human health, because we are trying to match. So from one side, it needs to be ensured that we are measuring the correct height. So there is no point to measure somewhere where the human are very unlikely to be jumping up. I don't know, 6 meters. They won't be picked, but nobody actually breathes air at 6 meters above the ground, isn't it? Therefore, it should be a relevant exposure, and there is a specific guidance. by DEFRA, which set up the requirements for the monitoring locations. I understand your point of differences between the monitoring at the analyzer and monitoring not far from the location. Again, this might be the height difference. This might be the environment. This might be the location of the diffusion tubes. We are, at the end of the day, we are looking for the worst case scenario, and Southampton Road 1 could be the worst case scenario where the traffic is idling, therefore the readings are higher, where the continuous monitor has to be located with the power supply. We cannot put it at our convenience or where we decide where the worst case scenario. We account for the location, however, we cannot just go with our wishes. There are limitations where we can do it. With regards to your comment about the public health, I absolutely support that, and we are looking for the, we haven't applied this year for the DEFRA grant, but we'll probably do it next year, or we will do something within our team as promoting the knowledge of the impact of air quality to human health within the health professionals. So this is within our agenda. Also, we are going to be participating in the air quality night. Again, this will support our current project, which we call My Journey, to promote the knowledge of the impact of PM 2.5 to the health, as well as the options how it could be improved. The first step is just don't burn at all. However, we are hoping that if we do participate in the Clean Air Night, we might get capture the greater audience, and we will capture it in the right season and time when people, that's going to be happening in January, when people are more likely to burn. Therefore, promoting that kind of knowledge will probably raise awareness and stop some people burning, or at least burning some raw wood or some unclassified solid fuel. Yeah. Anything else I've missed?
I was just wondering, obviously you mentioned that we would expect to see a higher level during the wetter months and a lower in the drier. We had a really wet summer. Would that have affected anything this year at all?
It will be. It will be because of the chemistry. When the air sits below, the temperatures as well make a contribution into it, and then the turbulence of the air. So whether the air sits closer to the diffusion tube, or the analyzer where we are measuring it, or we have an easier flow of the air. So this year we would be expecting a higher concentration only because of the meteorological impact. Not necessarily, although we are saying that 80% of the nitrogen dioxide concentration comes from traffic. However, this year we would be expecting to see higher concentration because in the summer, in comparison to last year, only because of the meteorological conditions. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I've got sort of plenty of questions, comments. Given the actual recommendation, there's not likely to be any sort of debate as such, so they'll probably get all thrown into one. I've also got some bits for Nikki that will need minuting, please, as well. and that. So at the last time that air quality was on the ELAC agenda, I actually asked for a training session for councillors because we had a number of new councillors, and it was I commented and asked that if it would be beneficial, because whereas some of us have worked with air quality for a number of years, we actually know what the mean averages are and all the other figures and what have you. It's actually new to some councillors, and actually at the time of asking, there was a number of councillors that said yes, we would like that. It was minuted in March this year, I think, is when it actually came, because it was 2 months late from January, and we've had no training. So again, I would actually like that to actually be added to the minutes, please, Nikki, that it hasn't been followed through from the March ELAC, I think, and that. Even though it wasn't minuted, and it could be because I've mentioned this before, but can't remember when, but there used to be an air quality working group. It's going back some time because Councillor Reynolds was actually on it. So we're actually going back pre-COVID and a bit before. So probably about 2018 up to about 2019, because obviously air quality, whereas we actually look after the Eastleigh bit, there's air quality issues in other parts of the borough, and the air quality action group was actually looking at air quality holistically across the borough, and actually what could be done. This wasn't minuted in March. I wouldn't actually put hand on heart that I mentioned it in March. It might be a previous one, but again, I'd like to make a request and have it minuted that that actual air quality working group is reinstated to look at air quality holistically across the borough. There would be some key people that need to be there, obviously one of them being cabinet member responsible for transport as well as members of ELAC. It's not necessarily an ELAC thing, but some members of ELAC would need to be on there, and obviously cabinet representation and that. So that's those two things. So I've got now a whole list of questions, comments, observations, etc., etc. So my first question refers on to page 63, and it's paragraph 7, and it's regarding the a new monitor for PM 2.5, and it's going to be situated in Coxrow Play area. And it's like, why? Because it's in the middle of nowhere. It's not near a main road. So that's a question. It was good to see Toynbee School in the press release, because that actually does fit in with some of the action plan. And actually one bit I just wanted to sort of comment on, because one of the things with air quality, as a local council, we are responsible for air quality, but there's actually an awful lot of stuff that we don't actually govern, because we're not the highway authority, for instance, an argument's sake. So we can't do a huge amount with the roads and such like. But I note that, where am I? Right, so yes, so paragraphs 20 to 22, this all to do with the environmental improvement plan, which all sounds really quite good, and that. But then I note, and this is the really disappointing thing, because this really does not help local councils to actually start looking at air quality, that the actual requirements have not been released by the government via DEFRA. I mean, DEFRA government is sort of the same thing. They haven't been disclosed. So I just wondered if there was any update on that, or is it just a wait and see? And then, of course, the big question that comes with it, with reference to that, is who pays? Because obviously, it's the Environmental Improvement Plan 2023, but we also are aware, quite recently, that some of these things can be rowed back on quite easily, and that. So on page 82, it's the end. I think it's the nitrous oxide graph. Yes. Yep. Okay. We can pause there then. Yeah, that's fine.
We have a statutory duty to monitor and report the data. So I'm not quite I will need to come back to you in terms of environmental improvement plan. With regards to the training, I wasn't aware that we need to have one. I'm happy to provide an update and give an overview of what the requirements are, where we're heading to, why we're doing it, and what the quality as I presented within the ELAC today, but the wider picture can be available as well, why we are talking about the nitrogen dioxide NPMs. And to your question about the monitoring of PM 2.5 in the middle of nowhere, it's a slightly different thing to the nitrogen dioxide. The source of nitrogen dioxide emissions is traffic, 80% of it. PM 2.5, the suggested monitor, first of all, it's been funded by DEFRA and will be installed by Bureau Veritas sometimes at the end of the year. And that's probably to give a background information. First of all, PM 2.5, it's called a transboundary pollutant. It can travel. It's a very, very small particulate. It's, if I'm not wrong, it's 10 times smaller than the thickness of your hair. Therefore, it can travel. Probably the PM 2.5 you breathe at the moment might have been traveled from the continent. That's how mobile these particulates are. But at the same time, they have the most detrimental effect to the air, to the human health, because they can go deeper into your lungs. At the same time, they can be primary, which are emitted by the source. They can be secondary, which can be formed in the atmosphere. They can be local. They can be transported from abroad. Therefore, they are installing it where they are installing it, just to give a background understanding what's going on in the area, not exactly catch up the particulates emitted by the traffic. And it can be natural, it can be artificial. It can be, for example, from the burning, or it can be sea salt, it can be Sahara dust, which we in the UK experience from time to time. So it's a lot of other sources, but traffic. Therefore, it's located. I think that's why they suggested to locate it where they suggested. Yeah. Have I missed something? Was there anything else?
Yeah, I've got more. I've got plenty more. On page 82, it's the graph with Southampton Road 1. It's I think it's the NO2, to be, and that. Whereas it's been suggested that there's sort of a downward trend. It's actually page 82 of our pack, so I don't think it was necessarily one of the slides that you had. But it's been suggested that air quality is on a downward trend, which, you know, great, overall it is. But then again, I'm not so sure looking at Southampton Road, because actually looking at it from 2021, 22 and 23, it actually seems to be much more of an upward trend. I'm looking at a slightly different graph to that one. And so that's just a sort of comment and observation. Now, the action plan, I've got, I mean, these are things that sort of need rectifying, and it, you know, it's a little bit unfair on you, Oksana, because it's Neil that's been dealing with this for a long time, and that. Now, I could go through, how many have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, plus a few other comments, and there's more issues I have within the action plan, where the action plan is not up to date, we're missing dates, we are taking something out rather than taking it out of the action plan. How can we actually improve it? There's some things in the action plan where there's been, for instance, a trial linking air quality and traffic data. We haven't seen those results. When are we going to get to see those results? You know, as a committee. And there's a number of you know, things, you know, run campaigns. Well, it's been put back because of staff shortage. Well, we haven't put a date in for the recommencement. And there's a number of things throughout that action plan where, you know, we haven't seen the results, dates aren't in, things have been put on hold, they haven't been reinstated. And actually, this actually then comes back to the reinstatement of the Air Quality Working Group, or this committee, you know, once we've actually, you know, the action plan actually looked at, line by line, corrected, brought up to date, and then this committee needs to be involved in that process, and this committee also needs to be the committee that actually decides whether or not an item is taken off the action plan. And actually, Mr. Payne is absolutely right. Air quality has always, from 2011 when I joined the council, and every time I chaired, and we used to have this in January, then an update in June, which was something I brought in, which has since slipped. It's always been last, air quality. Always last. There is actual merit in what Mr. Payne said about having a meeting on air quality. After councillors have had the training, I hasten to add, so that they actually, you know, are aware of, or fully aware, because councillors agreed they wanted the training, of all the figures and the facts and what have you, so that we can actually have that proper conversation on air quality, because air quality is important, and that, because it is the invisible. It was really interesting what you said about PM 2.5, really interesting, and that, and I mean, I think we're all probably aware of the damage it can do, because it can get through, you know, cell walls a lot easier than PM10 and what have you. But it was really interesting what you said about the mobility of it. I just thought it was, you know, PM 2.5 was coming from diesel engines and brake dust and rubber tyres. And that, I had no idea it could blow in from the continent and wherever else. I don't quite know how we'll combat that and build a very brick wall, which seems to be in fashion these days, and that. And that's the sort of thing that you know, we need to have the discussion around.
Paul, just stop you there. Sorry, you've got however many more points to do, but you've made some valid points about having some training, talking about the working group, and then having a proper ELAC session on this. So perhaps we need to be doing that first, and you can be bringing those points up when we have a proper ELAC session, so we can spend a whole evening doing it. Would the rest of the councillors agree that that would be something that we'd all like to see?
Well, I think, if I may, Chair, if I may finish, because this is a serious subject.
Yeah, I know, I understand that. That's why it needs to...
and that actually some of these points in the action plan probably need sorting before it comes to ELAC. Before it comes to public, and that's what needs to be gone through. The actual meeting needs to be a meeting where we can talk about air quality when we've got information and an action plan that is factually and accurately correct, which at the moment it is not. That's when we come to have the action, you know, the potential meeting of air quality and what have you. And then things like the 2.5 can be explained to members of the public. And I think members of the public, yes, I'm not sure on communication of that on air quality, because obviously at the moment there has been this thing with air quality, climate change, by-election and ULEZ, where air quality has actually been used as a weapon and mixed with climate change. That needs separating because of, as well, climate change and air quality are not the same things. So that's all things for the future, but there's all these points that I've mentioned and the action plan that needs to be fixed before we get to that further debate, and the councillors' training and potentially the reinstatement of the Air Quality Working Group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think we've kind of strayed into debate as well. So was there any other questions? Was there any other questions before we pick up any more debate points? Do we have any other debate? Can we minute that the ELAC would like a separate meeting once we've addressed the inconsistencies in the plan, as Paul said. So, do we have a proposer to accept this report? Thank you, Councillor Beer. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bicknell? Yep. All those in favour? That's clearly carried. Planning appeals. Move on to planning appeals. Councillors, next we have planning appeals. Can I ask that we note the appeals? We all read the appeals in the pack? Yeah. Thank you. The next meeting will be held on Tuesday, 14th of November, 7 p.m. at the Point. Thank you and good evening.